So my topic for today is lessons learned from African swine fever. Ayun ako. Ayaw mo ka. Okay. Now, beforehand, I'd like to differentiate again the topic, which is African swine fever. Kasi ngayon, pati sa media, may nagsasabi swine flu. Siyempre, yung sinasabing swine flu ay may sakit talagang swine flu. But there is no such disease as African swine flu. Meron ng swine flu na posibleng nasa Africa, but never a disease called African swine flu. The swine flu that is being described as a new pandemic or probable pandemic na sa China is an H1N1, and it is called G4, sabi. Okay. Ano ba ang reason bakit pwede raw maging pandemic? Because in history, in 1918, the first real global pandemic occurred, and it was called Spanish swine flu. It was an H1N1, and then again in 1957, 1968, and 2009, there was again a pandemic for swine flu. It was the H1N1 na zoonotic. Actually, ang origin is poultry. Pero gaya nga sabi ko, kinalat din sa baboy at saka sa ibang hayop. So we are talking now about African swine fever, which is an entirely different virus. So ang African swine fever, if we will describe it, is also known Peste porcine africaine and other name as described by the Center of Food Security and Public Health. I'll walk you through an overview of the organism, economic impact, epidemiology, transmission, clinical signs, diagnosis and treatment, prevention and control, and of course, the actions to take if you have it. Now let's describe the organism. ASF belongs to the family Asparviridae. It is an envelope DNA virus. It's a large virus that could be transmitted by arthropods. Isolates vary in virulence from low to high, and it could end up from a zero conversion if it is low, up to 100% mortality if it is highly virulent. In history, the discovery was in Kenya in early 1900s, but first reported in 1927. It spread to Europe, and the vector described the soap ticks in 1963. Then it spread further to the Western Hemisphere in Cuba in 1971, and the recent outbreaks, of course, include Russia, Europe, back to Africa, and it spread through Asia. It is highly resistant virus. It at least a lifetime of 30 days in pens, greater than 140 days in some pork products. It is killed by high temperatures and some disinfectants. It affects only the suid family, means any swine, both domestic and wild pigs. I gathered this from OIE, or the Organization for Animal Health. And these are the key facts. ASF is a severe viral disease affecting domestic and wild pigs. It is responsible for serious production and economic losses in pigs. It's a transboundary disease. It can be spread by live or dead pigs, both domestic and wild, and pork products. The transmission can also occur by a contaminated feed and fomites. These are the non-living objects such as juice, clothes, vehicles, knives, equipment, due to the high environmental resistance of the virus. It can last for long periods in contaminated environments or even cured pork products, such as the longanisa, sausage, tapa, tocino, bacon. There is no approved vaccine against ASF yet, unlike classical swine fever, which is similar but another disease. We call it also hog cholera. It's caused, of course, hog cholera is caused by tortoise suis. Historically, outbreaks have been reported again in Africa and parts of Europe, South America, the Caribbean, and since 2007, it has been reported across Africa, Asia, Europe, in both domestic and wild animals. Medyo paulit-ulit po yun sapagkat nag-i-emphasize po tayo ng mga facts about ASF. In Asia, ASF is present in China, Mongolia, North Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, South Korea, Myanmar, India, and most recently, Indonesia. What would be its economic impact? First, animal health. It may have high morbidity and mortality, although it is slowly contagious. It will also mean an import and export bans. You will have to quarantine and possibly depopulate because that is the requirement for eradication. It can become a prolonged epidemic. My thinking is that this will not be just a prolonged epidemic, but it could even be endemic in the region. So sabi ko nga sa mga farms, stakeholders, and my colleagues, perhaps we will have to live with the virus. Ang geographic distribution po, ito ay endemic, Southern Africa, and the island of Sardinia, then yung recent outbreaks sa Russia. It became worldwide. This is only an old slide. showing the global situation of ASF up to 2018. This is up to November 18, 2020. And 2018, during that time, all publications of African swine fever update showed how Vietnam got ASF, the US calling for bills to avert it for more inspections. It was said that in genetics, ASF will drive surgery in the animal experts. That's what's happening now. Because recently, Vietnam ordered 3 plane loads of GPs or grandparent stocks. And of course, feed companies have closed down, basically not only for ASF, but because of the low sales. In just 2 weeks, the impact of the disease was quite high. This slide would show that there were more than 5,000 or almost 6,000 pigs that were culled in just 2 weeks. The new or ongoing outbreaks are shown. Of course, Asia, 8 countries. Europe actually are more than 9 countries. And in Africa, there are 3 countries. Because as of today, more countries have been affected or re-emerge again for a second, third, fourth wave. It was a pandemic challenge in Asia, as shown in these slides. And I borrowed this slide from BAI, the ASF progression spread. You will see in 2018, as of August, we knew about the outbreak in China. And of course, this was followed by Mongolia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Hong Kong and North Korea, Laos, the Philippines in July 2019, Myanmar, and South Korea. The Philippines is said to have had the disease in July 26. We knew already that we had the disease. And so we were alarmed, and PCSP together with BAI and other stakeholders immediately held a meeting in August, early August, and BAI created a task force, but all the problem is that the formal announcement that we had ASF was, I think, about August 16 already. China reported has lost nearly half its pig population to ASF with this publication. And a lot of my colleagues in China have been calling me, describing me the disease. And the pathognomonic sign was splenomegaly, or the big spleen. Then we considered it as a national challenge. Again, Bai supplied me this slide. The dots were just enlarged for emphasis. Kulang pa nga ito kung sa ngayon ang pag-uusapan na tinamaan. By this map, these were the initial reports prior to November. But these are now the provinces affected as of June 4, 2020. You see, it started with Bucket Farms in Rizal. What happened was that the LGU and the entire task force, ASF of the Bureau, went to Rodriguez Rizal, called the pigs, and of course, they buried them. Nagpanic yung mga farmers. Kanya-kanyang palasot. Yung iba, binenta yung mga may sakit dahil para sa kanila, wala pa raw sakit. They were not carriers, they were not positive, they have not been tested. Dinala sa Pretil, dinala sa Bulacan, and soon we had an outbreak in Bulacan. And the commercial farms were hit then. After Bulacan, umakyat sa Pampanga. And all the way, Tarlac, Nueva Pangasinan. And the charge was going north to the mountain province, Nueva Vizcaya, Kalinga, of course, Nueva Ifugao, Benguet, and La Union. After that, pababa naman siya. Pumunta naman ng south. Down from Quirino and Aurora to Cavite. And then Batangas was hit because of the problem when Taal volcano erupted. Tinamaan po ang Laurel. At mabuti na lang na contain nila sa Laurel lang. But I think the reason for that is they became stricter. Walang pinapasok na magbababoy. Walang pinapasok maski nagsusupply ng feeds. And they controlled it along the border. That went to Laguna and then Camarines Sur. And of course, just recently, in 2020, it was now in Davao del Sur, Davao Occidental, and in Calinan, Davao City. Attending a conference in the Asian Pig Veterinary Society, I had a chance to speak with two experts who had studied ASF for decades. They were the leaders in their own countries, and their working hypothesis, according to them, in the early years was that they thought ASF will fade out rapidly due to its high mortality. And the ASF will also spread rapidly, just like rabies. initiating an epidemic wave. Dr. Deppner said the textbooks are misleading because the textbooks were saying ASF is a highly contagious disease causing high mortality up to 100%, which at the epidemiological unit would be dead animals to infected animals. But he found out years later that for both hypotheses proved to be wrong. There was no implosion or there was no, again, explosion. It became endemic in the region with its slow spread. He concluded ASF is not a highly contagious disease. The percentage of animals which get infected after contact with an infectious agent, the probability is only around 10 to 30%. He further differentiated ASF from foot and mouth disease and classical swine fever or hog cholera. He said in FMD, a persistence of 100% would only create a 2% mortality and lethality, although it is highly contagious. I remember when I was handling a big farm in Bulacan, we were selling the fatteners. Dinala ko sa slaughterhouse. Dinala sa holding pens. Wala pa akong 2 oras sa holding pens. Ang dami ng namimilay at meron na akong lesions ng FMD. So with 100 infected, the probability is 2 will die. For hog cholera, there may only be 50% persistence, a mortality of 25%, but lethality will be 50%. And there is only a moderate contagiosity, meaning when 50 are infected, 25 will likely be dead. And the difference with ASF is that if the persistence is only 10%, you will have a 9% mortality or greater. Lethality is 90%, so that the contagiosity is low with 10 infected, but 9 will be dead. So morbidity approaches 100% for previously unexposed herds. Mortality varies with virulence of the isolate, ranging from 0 to 100%. As I said, it could be low or high virulence and may be asymptomatic in wild pigs. So hunters beware, because the pig you may kill, you may slaughter, bring to the city, bring to the house, bring to your farm, and for all you know, you are as well transmitting the virus. On an animal transmission, there could be direct contact, usually oral nasal. It could be indirect, from uncooked garbage, fomites, bite of infected ticks, These are the optics, mechanically transmitted by biting flies, as it is found in all tissues and body fluids as well. This is a typical chart of African swine fever, where you have the wild pig and the domestic pig. It could be a direct contact with the carcass of a dead pig, or a direct contact with other boars, materials, hunting equipments, feeds, soft tick, which is the ornithodoros tick, and of course, other materials like boots, shovels, tracks. So ASF is transmitted and spread when the virus is found on all body fluids and tissues of infected pigs. So direct contact, ingestion of garbage containing unprocessed infected pig meat or meat products. You have ticks, of course, in Africa, in some European countries. Basically, in Asia, they have it in South Korea. Dito sa atin, magtago na ho yung wild boar. At siguradong makakain siya no hindi oras. Contaminated premises, vehicles, equipment, or clothing. The main risk factors for transmission of ASF would be movement and trade of infected domestic pigs. So yung mga biyahero natin, the livestock trucks may be contaminated. Swill feeding, as what we think was the spread to pigs in the Philippines, kitchen waste from hotels and restaurants. Contaminated farm equipment, transmission by infected wild boars locally in endemic areas, leftover contaminated food along roads, rest areas, and in nature eaten by local wild boars, creating new outbreaks. ASF can also be easily transmitted in water and feed. Siguro nakita niyo naman yung mga headlines noon ng mga baboy na lumulutang sa Marikina River, sa mga sapa ng Cruz de Regas sa Quezon City. And the feed may also be contaminated because some ingredients definitely will have it, as it will be shown in next slides. Flies can also play a role in transmitting ASF into farms. They say it's mechanical transmission. Pero sabi nga ng colleague ko na si Dr. Mende, you need 20 flies ingested sabay-sabay ng baboy. And we believe that we don't see pigs eating flies 20 na sila lang ang kumakain o sila nang uhuli. I've yet to see a pig catching flies. But of course, it will be a source of mechanical transmission, as observed by Dr. Prayo of Quevesia. He did a study and he proved that these flies can really transmit the disease with the help of the laboratory in CLSU. Then, of course, there was a publication by Pipestone, a team led by Dr. Scott D. from the US. They showed the survival of pathogens under transboundary shipping from Europe to America. And so with this table, the second column is African swine fever virus. And there were these ingredients, particularly soya or soybean meal, choline chloride, and we have dog food, cat food, pork, sausage, rings, even complete feed. And you will notice below that African swine fever virus were still present from a travel of so many miles. Yan ang dahilan kung bakit pag nag-i-import tayo, we are now giving them a downtime, usually 3 weeks bago sila mag-ship. Merong travel time na 45 to 60 days. Dahil napatunayan na in soya alone and wheat, para ka makasiguro 78 days bago mawala yung virus. So the team of Scott D found out contaminated feed ingredients could serve as vehicles for the transport of viral pathogens between regions, countries, or even across continents. Viruses can survive with feed, but survival is variable and depends on the specific properties of each virus. Certain feed ingredients or feed products present a better matrix for virus survival than others. And select ingredient matrices seem to enhance the survival of multiple viruses. So this is again a chart that would show the survival time of ASF. And I could call your attention to cooked meat with a minimum of 20 minutes or 30 minutes at 70 degrees centigrade. The survival time is 0. This is the reason why if accidentally we bought an ASF contaminated meat or pork, cooking it at 70 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes will already kill the virus. But if the meat is frozen, you will see that it will survive 1,000 days. The postmortem lesions for a chronic infection will be focal skin necrosis, fibrinous pericarditis, generalized lymphadenopathy, swollen joints, and consolidated lobules in the lung. There could be also the less common lesions of hemorrhages in additional organs. It could be a petechiae or chymosis, edema of the lungs, and gallbladder. But for acute disease, incubation period is about less than 5 days to 19 days. Most commonly, you could see in textbooks and journals about 5 to 14 or 15 days. The clinical signs may be high fever, moderate anorexia, cyanosis, recumbency, bloody diarrhea, abortion, and death. Whereas in chronic disease, you have multifocal erythema in the ears, abdomen. You can have raised or necrotic areas, intermittent low fever, coughing, painless joint swelling, emaciation, stunting, and again, death. That brings us to a differential diagnosis, basically against hog cholera, acute PRRS, PDNS, erysipelas, salmonellosis, actinobacillosis, Glasser's disease, pseudorabies, warfarin poisoning, or heavy metal toxicity. It's more than mistaken, most often than mistaken for hog cholera. But in contrast to pigs with hog cholera, African swine fever pigs do not develop conjunctivitis or encephalitis. Despite the high fever, ASF-infected pigs stay in good condition, whereas if they are affected by hog cholera, the pigs drastically lose weight. Another difference is that hog cholera is also characterized by a foul-smelling diarrhea. Medyo malasa po. For the common lesions, we see the hemorrhagic spleen. It's quite enlarged, friable, dark red or black in color. You will see the lymph nodes as hemorrhagic, kidneys with hemorrhages, particular hemorrhages, and the heart. So, before we submit samples to the laboratory, we usually contact the proper authorities like the regional lab, the central lab of the Philippine Animal Health Center. Of course, we contact the provincial veterinarians concerned, and the samples should be sent under strict, secure conditions to authorized laboratories authorized by BAI to prevent the spread of the disease. As of now, we already have several laboratories, apart from regional laboratories or private laboratories authorized by the Philippine Animal Health Center or BAI. For diagnosis, they suspect ASF in pigs are those with fever. The characteristic postmortem signs in the spleen and lymph nodes, and we subject them to laboratory tests, which could be a viral isolation, a viral antibody detection, or PCR, which is the standard test for the disease. For treatment, no treatment should be appended. Actions needed would be directed by the national and our provincial, city, animal health authorities. We slaughter confirmed cases as well as in contact animals, or possibly, especially for small pig holders, a complete herd slaughter. And then, of course, we restrict pig movements within the area. Now, what is the value of ASF in humans? Humans are not susceptible. If we eat a slightly cooked or eat even raw pork or barbecue pork, pagpasok ho yan sa stomach, the toxic juice will kill the ASF virus. Kaya safe po kumain ng pork, lalo na kung Pinoy pork. So prevention and control, our recommended actions for this: immediately notify authorities. This will be the government, local government unit, a provincial or city veterinarian. The Department of Agriculture, basically the Bureau of Animal Industry, Philippine Animal Health Center, the regional laboratories, and of course, quarantine. For quarantine, just for suspicion of ASF, we will quarantine the entire herd. There should be strict enforcement while we notify authorities to confirm the diagnosis. A usual disposal of carcasses would be by burial or burning. Burial deep enough, pero not to reach the water table. Disinfection is, of course, recommended because some disinfectants likely to be effective for envelope virus. I cannot put all disinfectants, but namely, all I have used were Bircon, Bimicon, Biosop, glyceraldehyde, Eradicate, 2% sodium hydroxide, pagsimento, and formaldehyde. I remember a colleague in Vietnam telling me, in Thailand, that's why they do not have ASF up to now. They have established checkpoints near Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam, and they use formaldehyde in all these checkpoints. Prevention, again, garbage-fed feed to pigs must be cooked. Yung mga kanin baboy ho, niluluto. I used to have to be a consultant to a small farm of a former mayor of San Juan, and we had kitchen waste from the restaurants in all of San Juan. I used to cook the kitchen waste before giving it to pigs. The help to control with the parasites, potential tick vectors, isolation of infected animals, and the slaughter of infected and in-contact animals. Disease control must be fast. Sabi nga ni Dr. Domingo, ayaw natin na umakyat. So we do not want to propagate the epidemic. That's why we avoid late detection, because there will be a late response. Yan ang nangyayari. Kanya kamukha rin sa COVID-19. Alam na ho natin na mayroong COVID-19 sa China. Wala ho tayong masyadong test kits. Nag-lockdown tayo Marso na. Enero pa lang, alam na natin. So we are too late to hero. Kanya nangyari, late detection, late response, kanya marami ho ang apektado. But with early detection, we have a rapid response and we have latent decay. Now, going back, ano ba nag-response sa gobyerno natin sa ASF outbreak? Sabi ko nga, July, alam na ng BAI na merong ASF. Pero hindi pa in-announce. August 16 pa nung ma-announce. Nagpalit muna ng sekretaryo bago na-announce. But then, in fairness to the government and BAI, immediately we requested for free border policies during our first meeting. I think that was August 4. And of course, yung pre-border policies, naglabas ho tayo ng measures for the export of meat and meat products to the Philippines, at another on the importation procedures for live animals. As applied by BI as of 30 September 2019, ito ang ating pork importation. It was mainly offals, yung fat, at yung importation were basically for meat processors. Ang major sources, sabi nila, sabi niya ng BI, ng imported pork as of 2017, ay yung mga countries na yan. Lowest was Italy and Austria, even Brazil, but the highest was Canada, Spain, and Germany. So immediately, nagbigay ho ng order, and Belgium was banned. And then, of course, the highest, Germany, was also banned, until we came out banning from all countries having ASF. And then the government, of course, nag-issue ng preventive measures. Wala pa tayong ASF noon. At pinangalanan lang nilang code name BAPES, which was to ban deport imports, avoid swell feeding, block the entry, educate our people, and of course, submit lab samples. Wala pang tama ang Pilipinas pa noon. Then, nung nagkatama na, we changed the code to Liempo, in which we were locating, holding, and cull the animals. We improved surveillance and reporting. We continued to educate stakeholders, mobilize porters, protect the zones, and optimize biosecurity. In fact, towards the end of 2019, we were discussing already the zoning of the country to red, pink, yellow, green. So, depende ho sa tinatamaan. Yung walang tama, green. By improved surveillance and reporting, they did barangay and village consultation. Kami po sa PCSP, yung amin po ibang kasamahan, ay nag-lecture din po sa mga stakeholders, mga farmers, smallholders, as well as commercial. Yung mga groups like the National High, Proport, and other associations, nag-seminar po ang mga PCSP. And naglagay ng checkpoints ang mga LGUs to the point na kanya-kanya pong maglalagay ng checkpoint at pagbaban ng mga baboy mula sa ibang areas. Kung kaya at one point before June, naglaki, dumami ang baboy at mura sa Visayas, Mindanao sapagkat yung mga dalahan nila ng baboy like Cebu, Leyte, dalban ho sa mga baboy na galing sa Mindanao. Pero ngayon ho, nakakapag-ship na either pork cuts, cold meat, or live hogs via Batangas from Cebu and Iloilo. Naglagay din ho sa airport dahil ang isang pinagtututahan ang nagkalat ho ng ASF ay yung mga dilatang kamukha ng maling na tainted with ASF virus. Tinakot po natin ang mga OFW na siyempre po pag-uwi ay may pasalubong ng mga dilata na mukha ng maling. Pina-analyze po natin ang 200,000. Nagkampanya ho tayo ng Eat Pinoy Pork to support our farmers. Nagkaroon ho tayo ng ASF mga stands na nagsasabi na bawal kung galing ka sa ganitong area, sa mga airport, sa mga seaports. Ginamit ho natin yung idea ng OIE. Nagpakalat ho tayo ng leaflets na Ang bahay ho ay nagawa ng mga leaflets on ASF, pinamigay ko sa convention ng mga veterinaryo, pinamigay sa mga association, at naman po sa Philippine College of Swine Practitioners, together with the Philippine Veterinary Drug Association, ay sumulat po ng isang primer. This was edited by Dr. Emil Santiago. Author po ako, co-author si Dr. Angel Manabat at si Dr. Rosal Cudao. At ito ay pinamigay namin sa mga colleges and also other veterinarians and farm owners. Now, can we prevent African swine fever entry? The usual answer I give is possibly yes. So what have we learned from this crisis? Una, ang dapat tandaan ay yung mga key epidemiological developments. It is not highly contagious. It has a high case fatality of greater than 90%. There may be a low initial mortality of less than 5%. A low prevalence of less than 5%. And it is not necessarily a density-dependent process. It is slow spreading with side fidelity or a habitat disease. See, the survivors are not necessarily carriers, and carriers are not necessarily shedders. There's no epidemiological relevance in an epidemic without tick involvement. Early detection only is by passive surveillance. Currently, there is still no approved vaccine or treatment for ASF. But more recently, I asked Dr. Yolanda Sevilla regarding vaccination, and she told me for 2 decades she has been working. There has not been any effective vaccine. Para sa kanya, she's from Spain. So she said we all need to do our part. That is keeping the pigs healthy and free of foreign animal diseases. Sabi niya sa akin, it will take years. One foreign veterinarian told me it may take 5 years for the vaccine to be developed. The Vietnamese were saying, no, it will take possibly only less than 5. So as an American veterinarian, of course, the Chinese veterinarian said they have it already. And another European veterinarian saying it may be developed in 15 to 20 years. Dr. Sevilla told me her strategies over the past years. She said she developed an inactivated vaccine. She found out there was no protection and does not confer cellular protection issues. Then she developed subunits, which gave only partial protection, basically because it has more than 150 proteins. Then she tried DNA vaccines, which gave only partial protection. And then, of course, the live attenuated vaccine, which developed chronic forms and had safety issues. But today, many are saying the UK vaccine is 100% effective. My Chinese colleague told me they have one vaccine which is 92% effective. The Vietnamese vaccine as 93% effective. But we are still waiting to finish their trials. So why are vaccines not easy to develop? Because it is complex virus, big size, with large genome. It's very resistant in the environment. It has genetic variability, and there is no production of neutralizing antibodies. There are 24 genotypes. The current genotype classification is not related with virus virulence or the disease evolution. Using one genome does not cross-protect against the other one, another genotype. But recently, as I said, China, in fact, has started ASF vaccine clinical trials, saying it's effective. The ASF vaccine being tested in Vietnam and also being promoted in very large farms is about 93% effective. The US, of course, continues to announce the vaccine progress. Other pharmaceutical companies are collaborating to develop a new ASF vaccine. But really, how do you reduce the risk? Biosecurity is the most effective control tool today. We enforce quarantine rules and entry control. We ensure that all persons entering the farm comply with quarantine rules. And these quarantine rules applies to all. The owners, employees, veterinarians, persons entering to repair some parts of the farm, even consultants, even your family and close friends. We have to change clothes and footwear. We should keep a visitor's log. We should know who, when, and why, as well as their last pig farm visit. You should wash and disinfect hands before entry, preferably shower in, if possible. You change all clothes and footwear before entry. We keep clean designated clothes and footwear available. You wash and disinfect. Parang COVID lang yan eh. Keep non-farm vehicles out of the farm area. And the trucks entering must be washed and disinfected prior to entry. And keep that track dry after disinfection. Baka naman tumutulo pa yung tubig sa loob na may kasamang manure ng nakaraang baboy. Pumupunta rin, pinapapasok mo sa farm. Equipment must be disinfected prior to entry. No leftover to pigs. Do not bring any pork derived from meat products inside the farm. Do not feed leftover food to pigs. Dispose of food waste in secure container. So cleaning and disinfection should be the basic SOPs. Shower in, shower out policy for farm personnel. Vehicles should not enter the farm or follow vehicle wash downtime procedures. Loading and unloading points must be outside the farm with a secured perimeter fence. Designate clean and dirty areas. I remember a farm which is about 300 soil level in Serbia, as mentioned by Dr. Debner. It has to fence the whole farm, including the house, and then the farm with the pigs had another fence. The husband and wife, who are the only workers in the farm, they don't accept visitors. They converse by telephone. They drive the pigs to market in a certain area outside the farm. Hindi sila tamaan in spite of very big farms surrounding them. Foot baths are important. Hand wash, disinfectant spray for every building and off-site marketing area. No visitors around the farm. Food containing pork or pork products are strictly not allowed inside farm premises. Ginagawa na rin dito yung bird proofing. And of course, fly and rodent control program. University of Kent shared this, which is a biosecurity check. So meron ho siyang score. Ayan ho ang global score at pinakikita ang average. The global average is 70%. External and internal biosecurity is about 58% or 64%. Ang sabi nila, 70% would be a standard average, but the higher, the better. Again, sa mga backyard sa Pilipinas, in-emphasize natin ang avoiding swill feeding or kitchen waste. If ever, lutuin muna. And then, of course, for other national control measures, ban imports, live pigs, genetic materials, pork-derived feed ingredients, byproducts from rich countries. Avoid the use of feed ingredients from rich countries. In case there will be deaths or slaughtering of farm animals, what would be your carcass management option? Of course, we selected burial, which is low in cost, although high risk. And of course, landfill, incineration, medyo mahal, tsaka hindi lahat can afford, although low risk. Quarantine is the first line of defense. Education is most important. Full commitment of authorities, because prevention is better than cure. We learned that there are certain feed additives like peptidoglycans or formaldehyde to stop the spread of viral disease. Okay. Then we have the cost awareness campaign, which is cost-effective measure, information and training assistance to all stakeholders. But this is what we had proposed in the first place. It did not happen. We wanted trust in communication. We wanted the Bureau or the DA to be transparent. We have to tell stakeholders everything you can, proactively and voluntarily. In the first place, ASF should have been announced early, even with incomplete information. Kasi sa pag-iwas natin, dumami na ho ang rumors. At natakot ang tao. Samantalang kung naging transparent tayo, in-explain natin mabuti, nag-update tayo frequently, and establish the leadership beforehand, siguro hindi ho lumala ang sitwasyon na ayaw kumain ng tao ng baboy. Remember, 68% of Filipinos prepare pork for all other meats. Then, of course, sana the government listen to the public and respond. We should have planned our communication for the extreme demands of an outbreak. Yun po ang hinintay namin sa gobyerno noon. Sabi nga ni Ronnie Domingo, the director, what is the winning side of the outbreak? He coined another code. Sumigaw siya ng Darna. At ang Darna ay you diminish the damage, have an amazing cooperation, have a rapid response, there should be national awareness and abandonment of bad husbandry. Yun po ang dahilan kung bakit naglalabas din kami ng good animal husbandry procedures para sa mga farms. At yun po ang sigaw ni Darna. But where are we today? Noong 2018, wala pa po tayong tama. China pa lang. So we came out with babes. Noong 2019, pumasok na. And so we came out with Depo. And this year, 2020, we are gunning for recovery. So, ang PCSP ho naglabas ng dalawang advisories. Basically, ano ang pinapayo namin? Farms should depopulate. Huwag nyo na hong hintayin yung natirang baboy na wala pang sakit ay tamaan. Doble gastos kayo. We recommended the use of sentinel pigs from ASF-free farms. Meron pa po tayong ASF-free farms na nando sa green areas. Basically, nasa Visayas at many parts of Mindanao. Ang suggestion po namin ay about 5 to 10% sentinel pigs, which will be raised with the pigs in your farm for the next 60 days. Meron pong regular testing yan. Ang aming pong idea ay weekly testing. So medyo magastos. Kaya lang, dapat matulungan tayo ng gobyerno para doon. 2 to 3 months old, mga nursery, pagka-fattening ang iyong farm, at pwede rin na poor gilts naman para mabilis dumami ang baboy. Meron nung tinatawag na tooth extraction strategy. So kung meron kang isang building with about 100 pens, for example, tinamaan ho yung pen 50, kakatayin mo lahat yung pen 50, nasa pen 50, at yung katabing 51 and 52, kakatayin mo rin. At pagkatapos, hindi mo nalalagyan ng baboy yun, at yung lahat ng ibang pens na may baboy, ay lalagyan mo ng sentinel. Pero sabi nga ng kaibigan ko sa China, pwedeng successful, pero mas marami ang hindi. I did also the tooth extraction strategy in some farms in Pampanga, and it was never successful. You rest the farm for at least 3 months bago mag-repopulate. In some farms in China, 2 buwan lang, lalagyan na. But up to now, they are unsuccessful. And of course, cleaning and disinfecting regularly, thorough disinfection. You have to study and implement it properly. Tandaan po ninyo, ang disinfection, marami yung disinfectants. They clean and disinfect or kill the virus after 10 to 50 minutes or 30 minutes of exposure. Kanya nga ho yung footbath, dahil pagtapak mo, lumalakad ka pa rin, hindi ho effective yun. because the disinfectant, nawawala ho kagad. Mas mabuti pa yung magpalit ka ng footwear, i-disinfect mo yung footwear or ibabad sa disinfectant for about 15 to 30 minutes and that will kill the virus. So ano ho ang take-home message ko? ASF is a human-driven disease. Humans are the main cause of long-distance transmission and virus introduction into pig farms. So it is crucial to include social science when planning prevention, control, or eradication measures. By considering only the biological characteristics of the disease, but ignoring the human aspects, the epidemic will not be controlled. Unity, yan ho ang kailangan natin. I enjoin all farm owners, media, educators, government officials, veterinarians, caretakers, all of them should act as one. Ito po ang kulang natin pati dito sa COVID-19. And if you know this guy near a car, it's a Ford car, definitely because he is Henry Ford. I will say, coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. But working together is success. Yan po ang kailangan natin sa panahon ng pandemic. Efficiency is the name of the game. Marami pong salamat. Thank you. I hope you have learned.
Salamat, Doc Soy. Napaka-informative po nung naging discussion nyo with this topic. So we have some questions po and clarifications po na isinend sa atin. So we are now going to proceed with the open forum po. Okay. So for the first question po na na-send in sa atin from Parel Magtoto po. So he is extending his thank you to you, Doc Soy. So very informative presentation. And then, as for the question, you mentioned that infected swills from hotels, restaurants was the source of ASF at the ground zero. May I ask, would you know where did those hotels and restaurants source their pork?
Okay. Actually, this came from a colleague in Rizal. Alam nyo, ang isa sa hotel na pinanggalingan ay Manila Hotel. Yung Manila Hotel, nagbebenta po doon sa isang kaibigan natin na nagtitinda ho sa Rodriguez ng mga kitchen waste. Dahil siyempre, kung ang halaga ng feeds ay 1,500 ang bag at binentaan ka ng isang drum na kanin baboy at 150, pareho rin lalaki yung baboy. Backyard ka lang. Doon ka kikita. So, ganun po ang nangyari. According to him, the feeds came from Manila Hotel. At siyempre, ang Manila Hotel bumibili din naman sa mga meat processors din, di ba? And then, alam niyo naman, pagka pinrases yan, tainted doon ng ASF, hindi na mamatay yung ASF. And so, doon pumutok una sa Rodriguez Rizal ang ASF. Then of course, kumalat sa Antipolo. Ngayon, nung kinakal na ho ng ating BAI at ng task force ASF, kinakal at depopulate ang mga smallholders, nagpanic sila. So, kasi gumamit ko ng pulis din, sundalo. Siyempre natakot, yun lang ho ang pinagkakakitaan. Marami hong daanan outside of Rodriguez, no? Pumunta ng Quezon City, Bulacan, pumunta ho sa Pritil, nagkatay ng baboy, binenta sa kapitbahay. Ganun ho ang dahilan ng pagka-spread ng sakit. Okay? At saka, kung tatandaan ninyo, hindi ba nabalita yung May Kenny? So ano ang ginawa ng May Kenny? Sila mismo ho, sinara nila, they took back their products from different groceries. They were positive for ASF din. Plus, marami ho yung mga nagtitinda sa palengke na hindi ho nauubusan, ginagawa longganisa, ASF na rin pala yun. Ganun ho ang pangyayari. Kanya, basically, maski sa ibang bansa, ang sinasabi ang Pilipinas, nagkaroon ng ASF because of feeding of kitchen waste or swill and cooked garbage to their swine. Okay.
So another question po from one of our attendees. So hi Doc Lapus, you have all been very active in the campaign against ASF, and we've always been supporting this. For the past year, our focus has always been on biosecurity and swill feeding. I would like to know if there has been any action against those who peddle swill feeds, or if we have any plans in passing an ordinance or law of prohibiting swill peddling.
Alam nyo, sa isang developing country na kamukha ng Pilipinas, yung swill feeding, palagay ko, will continue kahit may batas tayo. Sapagkat hindi ho kumikita ang baboy. Ngayon pa lang ho kumikita. Pre-pandemic period, COVID, ang presyo ng baboy mababa. Ang cost ng feed mas mataas. Lalo na ho kung minodernize mo yung piggery mo. Ang cost ng breeders mataas. So ngayon, ang pagkakataon lang ng isang maliit na farmer, alam niyo naman, ang pag-aalaga ng baboy would be for different reasons. Yung iba ho, para mag-sideline, lalo na yung government workers, yung mga teachers, sideline lang ho yan. Yung iba naman ho, naghahanda para sa kasal. Yung iba naghahanda para sa binyag, birthday, sa Pasko, bagong taon, o sa, yung iba nga, pati sa pinaghahanda na ho, yung kamatayan ng biyanan. No? Pero siyempre pa ho, dahil gusto nilang makatipid, no? Doon lang sila kumikita. Sabi nga ho ng kapitbahay ko, Dok, ako dating H&B, hukbalahab daw siya. Nung magbabayo ako, pinapakain ko lang ho dyan sa ilalim ng kumon. Alam niyo ba yung kumon sa Bampakan? Yun ho ay toilet. So pagka meron hong nando sa itaas, pagbagsak ho nung kanyang sakit sa tiyan, pagkain ho ng baboy yun. Extra. O kaya, kanin baboy lang. Doon daw siya kumikita. Pero yun hong isa naming kapitbahay din na merong 100 sa level, hindi yung kumikita kasi pigs lang pinapakain niya. Yun ang reason kanya kumisan, culture natin. Kanya ako sa Vietnam ngayon, dahil nagpapakain din sila ng kanin baboy. Alam niyo, ang ginawa nilang community, barangay kitchen. Nagdadala ng kanin baboy, niluluto doon sa barangay kitchen. At saka yun ho ang pinagbibili sa mga nag-aalaga ng baboy. So that was one strategy. Parang centralized yung kanin baboy. No? Hindi sa isang pinupuntahan. Okay?
Ginawa nilang systematic. Ano, Doc? So, another question po from Dr. Cesar Chongson po. For how long can we start restocking, especially in endemic area farms? Not affected but decided to repop, and farms affected and buried dead pigs.
Ang dami na nagtanong sa akin yan eh. Hindi ko kaya ng 2 to 3 years. Sabi ko nga, baka mamaya abutin pa kami ng 5 taon para mapalaki yung farm. No? Kasi hindi ko ganun katali. Dahil lalo na kung endemic yung area, kahit wala na ho yung ASF do sa farm. Ang nire-recommend namin ay total depopulation, resting for about 3 months. And then, kung gusto mong magsimula, pwede bang guilt ang simulan, puro guilts lahat. Kasi hindi mo agad-agad ano yun eh. Or kung gusto mo patterning ka lang, simula ka rin sa piglets. So it will take time, really. Yun ang ano ko. At saka, ang bantayan mo dyan, yung disinfection eh. Kasi alam nyo, meron akong isang kaibigan na microbiologist and virologist. May laboratory. Meron nung isang farm nang sinabi, araw-araw nagdi-disinfect for the last 2 months. Gusto niya magkaroon ng bagong stocks. Yung kaibigan ko ho, nag-swabbing sa ibang area within the farm. Alam niyo bang positive pa rin sa ASF? So in other words, hindi niya na-disinfect thoroughly yung farm. So that must be supervised. Kasi pag ikaw nagsasabi lang sa boy, yung mga boy hindi naman technical eh. Sana ko ikaw mismo gumagawa. No? Nakita sa singit-singit ng labangan. Kakain ng baboy. Yung labangan ay may ASF virus. So, may tama ka agad yung farm. Yun din na sinabi sa akin ng isang direktor ng AVBS sa Korea doon sa ginawa nila. Kaya ngayon, dahan-dahan sila. Tsaka kailangan yung sentinel galing sa ibang farm na certified ASF-free. So galing lang sa green zone. Huwag tayong maglagay ng akala natin sentinel. Galing din sa red zone. Red to red din. No? Okay?
Okay po. Thank you, Doc. So another question po from Parel Magtoto. Doc, could you kindly expound more on your discussion point that ASF is not as contagious as what the textbook say?
Okay. It's not very contagious kasi ang nangyayari niya, may mga ibang sakit kamukha ng FMD na ang persistence 100, highly contagious. So, ang experience ko sa FMD noon, kasi I used to be a consultant of a very big farm with 10,000 sows. Abay, sa isang building, isang pen ang tinamaan. 2 baboy nakitaan ng lesions sa umaga. Nung balikan ko ng hapon, 20 na yung may tama. Natulog ako, kinaumagahan, pinuntahan ko. Ang may tama, 10 pen na. So, nagbenta kami doon sa mga walang lesions. Pagdating sa slaughterhouse, puro may lesions. Yung baboy na binenta namin. Dahil kailangan ipahinga. Dahil magkakaroon ng batik-batik na dugo pagpagod ang baboy at kinatay. So, ganun kabilis ang contagious niya. Ito, magkakaroon yung ilang baboy, tapos yung iba hindi mo na makikita yung symptoms. Sabi ko nga, may lagnat na nga eh. Akala mo okay pa yung baboy. Marami akong tinest at gumamit ako ng rapid test. So, negative, supposed to be, ang alam ko. Alam niyo, no, PCR ko kay Dr. Antegro, lumabas na merong iba positive sa PCR. and they were asymptomatic, healthy yung baboy, walang umuubo, walang may lagnat at that time. Pero walang diarrhea. At tapos biglang naging positive. So why was it? Because some were carriers, but they were not shedders. Hindi pa siya may tama. Pero dapat doon, baka may tama na siya, pero hindi pa 4th day or 5th day or 7th day kasi gano'n ang labas eh. Yun ang dahilan ko bakit ang rapid plate test, it is an antibody test. Pag nagkaroon ka ng mortality, bumilang ka ng mga 14 araw o sunod-sunod ng mortality, tsaka mo checkin lahat yung mga baboy, and they will be positive for the antibody. Pero ang ginagawa ko ngayon, both rapid plate test, antibody, and PCR ang ginagawa ko para huli yung asymptomatic, huli rin yung tinamaan na. Ganun. So it will take time.
It take time po. It take time po. So another question po, is there a study on how long seepage from buried carcasses will reach the water table, as most of the farms are using deep well or submersible pump as water source?
Kasi meron mga areas na bababaw lang tubig na, lalo na yung tabi ng river. Na humukay ka pa lang eh, sabi ko nga eh, wala pang 1 meter, may tubig doon sa lupa. Ngayon, pagka doon mo binaon yung baboy mo, definitely, ikakalat mo yung ASF. Ganun na nangyari sa Vietnam, ganun na nangyari sa China. Maski yung mga nililibing, na pagka bumabagyo, nagkakaroon ng landslide, gano'n. Sa mountain province, gano'n. No? So, nagkalat yung mga baboy na may sakit. Dahil sa ulan, kinalat din ang virus kasi hindi malalim ang pagkakabaon. Sabi nga nila, 6 feet under the ground. Parang tao na rin. Pero ang ginagawa namin, nilaline namin ng plastic o kaya naka-cadaver bag, parang cadaver bag. No, para walang na lumalabas, wala seepage ng dugo. No? Yan. At saka hindi mabubungkal ng aso o ng kahit anong hayop para ikalat. Yun. Ganun ang ginagawa.
So another question po from one of our attendee. Thank you, Doc, for being honest about the situation of our country. May I just know your insights about the confirmation of China wherein new flu virus can jump from pigs to humans, though its genotype differs from ASF as what we have here?
Yes. Alam nyo, yung bagong virus ngayon sa China, H1N1 yan. So tinawag lang na G4, pero H1N1 din. Yun hong biggest pandemic to date pa rin ay yung 1918 na Spanish flu. Alam niyo ba, yun din ay H1N1. So yun ho ay tumagal ng 19 months. No? At alam niyo ang pinanggalingan, hindi naman baboy. Manok ang pinanggalingan. Pero zoonotic, kumakalat sa baboy. Kanya nga swine flu pa rin ang tinawag yun. No? Basics. Tapos, nagkaroon ng 1957, nagkaroon ng 1968, nagkaroon ng 2009. Yung 2009, baboy pa rin. So, involved ang baboy. Parang, ang nangyayari, alam niyo ba na yung Spanish flu ay pinagdudahan din ang China sa isa sa source ng virus? Parang kasama lagi ang China eh, pagka merong flu. Ewan ko kung bakit sa dami ng tao, uso pa rin sa China ang pagkain ng exotic food. No? Pag kumakain pala ng exotic, yun ang kadahilanan. No? And because of the H1N1, yun, then it has the capacity to be another pandemic. Kasi RNA virus yan eh. Nagmi-mutate. No? Nagmi-mutate. Unlike African swine fever, DNA yan. No? Yan ang difference nila. No? Pagkatapos, uunahin ko na, ewan ko kung may magtatanong nito, may coronavirus daw ba ang baboy? Kasi yung COVID-19, coronavirus. Meron po. Pero ang coronavirus ng baboy, example, TED, TGE, karamihan ho ng coronavirus ng baboy sa digestive system tumatama. No? Saka yung iba doon, may bakuna na. Pero ang COVID, walang bakuna. At saka basically, alam nyo, ang kinamamatay pala sa COVID, yung blood clot sa respiratory system, yung mga arteries doon, nagba-blood clot. Yun ang dahilan, kanya nahihirapang huminga. No? Hindi yung outright pneumonia. So kung ma-prevent mo yun, meron isang simpleng bagay. Uminom ka ng aspirates. Kahit isang aspirate lang araw-araw. So may blood thinning ka na. Wala ka ng clot. Kanya yun ang ginagawa ko. Umiinom mo ako ng aspirate.
Ayun, may additional si Doc na info, ano po. So, ito naman, Doc, she is soliciting your, kumbaga, opinion about this. Ano po, do you think po our government won't repeat the same mistake they made on delaying info about ASF with the impending predicament, predicted pandemic such as the G4 virus?
Nalulungkot akong sabihin na baka mangyari na naman yan. Alam niyo po, si Health Secretary Duque, siya rin ang Health Secretary noong nagkaroon ng pandemic ng 2009, panahon ni Gloria Arroyo. No? Kanya kung tutusin, alam niyo ba na ang number one natutuhanan sa mga pandemic na nakaraan mula Spanish flu, no? Lalo-lalo na ako doon sa last pandemic ng 2009, ano ang nakagaling? Social distancing. Yung social distancing, totoo ho. Kanya nga nagtaka ako nung nanonood ako TV. Hinuli si Casey Montero, no? Doon sa mga kumakain sa restaurant. Dahil ang mali nila, wala raw social distancing. Ano nangyari? Kinarga sila sa van. Dikit-dikit sila. No? Dahil dinala sila sa presinto. Dikit-dikit, di wala social distancing. Ganon din, no? So, malaking bagay ang social distancing. Sa baboy, kanya takot tayo that dinidepopulate. Kasi wala rin sila social distancing. Tabi-tabi sila sa kulungan. No? Yan ang isang natutunan ko dito. At pagkatapos, ewan ko ba, si Secretary Roque, nagsisigaw, hallelujah, hello, natalo niya raw ang UP. Alam niyo, mahirap talunin yung taga-UP. Kasi nagre-research yung mga yan. Alam niyo ba, ang sabi ni Secretary Roque, umabot lang yata ng 36 at 7,000 ang COVID cases. Pero mali yun. Hindi yun ang tamang data. No? Ang information na tama, 46,000 ang affected. Kasi yung mga hindi sinasabi o yung backlog ng DOH, hindi niya idinagdag. Kaya kung tutusin, 46K ho as of June 30 ang tinamaan sa Pilipinas ng COVID. Lumagpas ho sa prediction ng UP na 40,000. Okay? So yun lang masasabi ko. Kanya kung may anak kayo na sinungaling, sabihin nyo, wag tanda at wag magsinungaling. Kasi paglaki, baka maging spokesperson siya. Baka maging spokesperson ang trabaho niya.
So we will be entertaining the last 5 question po sa ating Q&A for Zoom kasi may ilang question pa rin po tayong open with our Facebook Live. So unahin ko po muna to with the last 5 question. Ano po? So from Mr. Alpi Taiko, good afternoon po Doc Soy. Thanks for the information. May question po based sa presentation, all Luzon and part of Mindanao are infected of ASF. So we have the potential now in Western Visayas in term of production. Can we be allowed to na i-travel ang live na mga alaga naming baboy to Luzon?
Nagsimula na akong mag-travel kasi yung Iloilo, dumating ho 100 or 150 live pigs ng linggo sa port area. So kung isasama nyo pati yung parang shipment cost, parang pumapatak na ang presyo nila ay 160 pesos per kilo. Siyempre, dito sa Luzon, ang presyohan ho ay 170 to 180 per kilo na ngayon. So halos parehos lang ho. Ngayon, may darating ho uli dahil meron nang na-identify na 1,600 fatteners sa Cebu at yun ay ibibiyahe diretso papunta sa Batangas Port. Kasi ang Batangas ASF free. Yan na, mangyayari na ho yun.
So coming na yung mga ganang bagay po.
Yeah, because sa pork in a box.
Apo.
Saka sa ngayon, no, siyempre, hindi ko alam kung natakot ang Cebu. Nagbukas na rin ho sila. Saka Leyte, binuksan na ho sa mga baboy galing Mindanao kasi maraming baboy sa Jensen. Pero sa ngayon, ang dumating para na live hogs na alam ko ay from Iloilo at susunod na yung from Cebu.
Okay po. So ito po ay related na question po din dun sa pagta-travel natin ng live animal. So is there any test required before nila ma-transport ang kanilang stocks?
Well, they should be certified ASF-free. So kami ho ay nakikipagtulungan. In fact, anytime now, we will be signing a MOA with a laboratory and ITCPH for yung mga training at saka surveillance for ASF sa barangays anytime now. So, para matulungan din namin yung mga farmers na malaman nila na ASF free. Alam niyo, ang problema natin, kulang ho tayo sa test kit. Ang totoo nito, before the lockdown, ang nangyari ho ay naubusan ng test kit ang PAHEC. Naubusan ng test kit ang Region 3. So, hindi ko alam kung saan makakuha ng test kits. So, natakpan ng COVID-19 ang ASF. Pero sa totoo, sa pagmamonitor ko, marami yung tumatawag sa akin dahil alam nyo, di ba ako speaker ng Pioneer Doc noong unang panahon na kung saan halos ang kasuluk-sulukan ng mga bayan-bayan sa Pilipinas, Luzon to Mindanao. Ang hindi ko lang napuntahan ay Tawi-Tawi, Sulu. Ay nag-seminar ko ako tungkol sa baboy. So yung mga naging estudyante ko noon, tinetext ako kuminsan na I receive about 30-40 texts about pigs na dito po sa amin mukha yatang may outbreak, may ganon. Alam niyo yung mga outbreak sa Mindanao, bago pa ako mapunta sa dyaryo, nalaman ko na. At na-announce ko na sa ibang mga kaibigan at saka ibang stakeholders bago napunta sa dyaryo. Kasi may mga stakeholders ako may hirap na maliliit ang piggery, sinasabi sa akin na ganun daw ang nangyari. No? Pati yung sa Davao.
Okay. So, another question po, Doc? If swill feeding has been a problem for recurring ASF, so with us to other animals like ducks, free-range native chicken, which is bird flu, or maybe you told earlier that in other country, they have made it systematic one. Can we also adapt this gradually?
Matagal ko na ako nire-recommend yan, pero, well, sometimes you only recommend. They don't listen. and they don't implement it. Yun ang marami sa atin eh. Pero bakit sa COVID, nagkaroon tayo ng mga quarantine areas, pati mga motel and hotel, ginawang quarantine areas. So ibig sabihin, if there's a will, they can do it. Kasi pagka gusto, okay lahat. Pagka ayaw, maraming dahilan. Ganun.
So,
Yun lang ang problema.
So for our last question po from Mr. Neil De La Cruz, with the vaccine far from being developed, will the ASF have heavier economic impact in the long run to the swine industry, considering also the virus persistence?
Yes. Kung wala akong bakuna, ang problema lang ko kasi yung mga bakuna, kailangan ho safe, hindi ho nagkakaroon ng shedding para hindi kumalat at saka effective. So far, right now, ang UK, isang company sa UK at isang company sa China ang nagsabi na 100% tumatalab yung bakuna, effective. For safety, hindi pa ho namin alam. Ngayon, sa Vietnam, it is 93% effective. Yung safety na rin ang pinag-uusapan. Kasi sa ngayon, siyempre yung cost din eventually. Pero sa dami, global pandemic ito, siguradong millions of doses kaagad yan. So kung sino unang maglabas at mag-launch, yun ang magiging multi-billionaire. At inaasahan na at the end of the year, may decision na dahil lumalabas ang Pilipinas, the PCSP has been alarmed by or warned by hindi warned. Sinabihan na ng BAI na baka pwedeng sumama kami sa testing ng bakuna. Pero dahil ang PCSP hindi commercial, nagbigay na lang kami ng advice na pwede na lang i-trial, bakit hindi? Siguro meron ding mga farms sa Pilipinas ang sasama. Pero hindi ko alam kung anong bakuna yan. Pero as far as I know, there are at least 3 vaccines already that are looming to be used for ASF. At sana magkatotoo. Hindi pinayagan yung may isang bakuna from Vietnam na gusto mag-trial. Ako ang kinausap. Ang bala ko sana namin, maglalagay kami ng baboy sa 100 islands in one of the island. Exclusive. Tapos doon ho babakunahan. Pero hindi ho pumayag yung LGU at hindi rin payag ang BAI. Kasi modified live ho yung vaccine. Yun ang reason. So, ewan ko kung paano ang magiging agreement ng BAI with a vaccine manufacturer kung ito ay itatrial dito sa Philippines. Pero definitely, ang napansin ko, there are 3 products that have been mentioned to me by my colleagues na bakang malapit na either at the end of the year or next year ay ila-launch na. Ganun. So it will not be 5 more years, sabi sa akin. Hindi ko alam kung totoo. Alam niyo na, maraming spokesperson na mahirap paniwalaan. Yun ang dahilan. Well, I wish that government's action will be prompt, will be fast. It will consult the stakeholder at once. They should be transparent. No? Dapat kung walang kit, sabihin nila kasi kung yung pondo para pambili ng kit ay ginamit para sa COVID-19, natakpan ng ASF, at ngayong lumuwag, biglang nag-charge ang ASF, nataranta na naman ng DA, naghahagilap ng pondo, so hindi ko alam. So we have to be transparent. We have to trust you. As of now, ako, 50-50 yata ang trust ko sa gobyerno. No? Ang spokesperson natin, it's not a veterinarian. No? Journalist lang. Ipakita lang ang difference ng African swine flu at saka African swine fever. Ang dami pa rin journalist nagsasabing African swine flu. Wala naman akong ganun sakit. Oh. Yan ang problema. Kanya, itong gobyerno na to, mas nakakalito. Pati mga protocols, iba-iba sinasabi. Hindi nyo alam kung alin ang tama, urong-sulong. So that is the reason why at PCSP, sabi ko, science-based lang tayo. Huwag tayong mag-advise ng hindi covered by science.
Okay, Doc. Maraming salamat po. Ayan. Doon po nagtatapos ang ating question and answer. And we would like to thank you, Doc Soy, for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. Maraming salamat po, Doc. Very informative discussion po with you talaga. Ayan. And for our participants in the webinar and viewers in our FB Live, thank you for joining us this afternoon. See you again on Friday for the last leg of this webinar series. Participants, don't forget to answer the survey after you click the leave button. Okay? So, good afternoon po ulit and maraming salamat and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you again, Doc Soy.